Hello everyone, my name is Rufilo Monakosi. I'm the Advocacy Officer at Southern Africa Federation of the Disabled, otherwise known as SAFOD. SAFOD is a leading regional disability network organization that has been at the forefront of advocating for the rights and inclusion of persons with disabilities across Southern Africa for over 3 decades. Boasting 16 affiliates of National Federations of Organizations of Persons with Disabilities, OPDs. Our mission is to advocate for disability inclusive policies and practices at a regional level. We collaborate with a network of regional and national organizations such as government departments, development partners, civil society organizations, just to mention a few, to drive meaningful change and promote an inclusive society where persons with disabilities are treated with dignity, respect, and on the basis of equality. Our work extends to implementing innovative projects, lobbying and advocating for disability inclusive policies, laws, strategies, and programs, and creating awareness on the challenges and barriers faced by persons with disabilities. One of our latest projects is on enhancing disability inclusive disaster risk reduction capacities and strengthening resilience against climate change related disasters in Southeast Africa region. The project is supported by BMZ, the Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development of Germany, and implemented in partnership with Christian Blind Mission and 6 other local partners in Malawi, Zambia, and Zimbabwe. The objective of this project is to contribute to reducing the increased risks of persons with disabilities in climate change-related disasters by strengthening inclusive disaster risk reduction processes and climate change adaptation processes. Despite international frameworks such as the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction and the Paris Agreement emphasizing the importance of including persons with disabilities in these efforts, many national policies still fall short in both planning and action. Too often, the voices of persons with disabilities and their organizations are left out of the policy-making processes, denying them the chance to shape the solutions that impact their lives. A recent study by CBM has revealed significant gaps in national disaster preparedness, especially when it comes to including persons with disabilities. Among those most at risk are women, girls, and children with disabilities, who face heightened dangers due to early warning systems and evacuation plans that fail to account for their needs. The need for inclusive disaster risk reduction and climate adaptation strategies are critical, especially for persons with disabilities. One of the biggest challenges of our time is adapting to climate change and its extreme weather events. In southeastern Africa, communities are grappling with more frequent and intense droughts, floods, and cyclones driven by the escalating El Niño Southern Oscillation phenomenon. These challenges are compounded by political and socio-economic instability and are pushing millions into deeper poverty and food insecurity, particularly persons with disabilities. Southeastern Africa is a region rich in diversity, culture, and resilience, yet vulnerable to disasters such as floods, droughts, cyclones, and pandemics. For the millions of people living here, particularly those with disabilities, these disasters can be life-threatening and life-altering. The 3 target countries were chosen because they share similar vulnerability profiles to extreme weather events like droughts, floods, and cyclones, as well as the long-term impacts of climate change. The communities in these countries rely heavily on rain-fed subsistence agriculture and are particularly hard hit by climate-related disasters, leading to food insecurity, worsening poverty, and low productivity among smallholder farmers.
Working with Federation of Disability Organizations in Malawi, and I also coordinate a project in disability inclusive disaster risk reduction, which is operated in the lower part of Malawi, where there's prone to the land that is so prone to disasters. Actually, what I've seen during disasters, the experiences of persons with disabilities, however, I haven't been part of the disasters, but then since I go there to implement the project, I discovered that persons with disabilities, most of the time they are forgotten during disasters, and even sometimes they are not attended. The people discover that somebody has been taken away by floods after they have discovered that person is not there. Even if they are assistive technologies, most of the time when they are carried away, they struggle to find them back. because the government itself, they do not plan well considering the assistive devices of persons with disabilities. At the same time, even if when they go to the camps where they are, when they are rescued and there are no evacuation routes that are accessible. All those are some challenges that persons with a disability experience. Yes, please tell us your names. What what position do you carry? I mean, do you hold in the disaster committee?
My name is Michel Martin. I come from Tengani, MTA Tengani Sanje, Area Disability Forum ATF chairperson.
My name is Macfields Black. I'm coming from Yamala village. It's a village which is found in the Senior Chief Tengani, in the area Senior Chief Tengani Sanje, that's Malawi. I'm a member of Area Disability Forum, and to the disasters, I'm a village disaster risk reduction committee member.
My name is Smart Nessa. I live in Tengani village in Sanje, Malawi, and I'm a chair of Disaster Risk Management Committee.
Ms. Elisa Ravengai, a disability inclusion specialist at Fort Pierce, and Mr. Jethro Piri, a programs officer at Zafford, will delve deeper into these challenges and the crucial role that OPDs play in ensuring that disability inclusion is prioritized in disaster risk reduction processes.
My name is Elisa Ravengai. I work at the Federation of Organizations of Persons with Disabilities in Zimbabwe. I am the Disability Inclusion Specialist. Persons with disabilities face a lot of barriers. The effects of disasters on persons with disabilities are complex and multidimensional due to their heightened vulnerability and high exposure to extreme weather events and other emergencies. It is important to think about persons with disabilities during disaster preparedness, response and recovery. Persons with disabilities should not only be involved as mere beneficiaries, but also as participants who should represent their lived experiences, who should also advocate for their rights, who should also advise and also build the capacity of emergency responders to include persons with all forms of impairments to the community at large. It is important to collaborate with persons with disabilities to ensure that they apply universal designs to respond to their accessibility needs, and also to policymakers to ensure that laws and policies and practices are adopted that are inclusive, that are responsive to the needs of persons with all forms of disabilities. And the framework that should be followed is the human rights-based approach. Thank you.
My name is Stephen Jethro Piri. I work for the Zambia Federation of Disability Organization. The Zambia Federation of Disability Organization is an umbrella civil society organization in Zambia that has a mandate to coordinate the disability movement from a civil society perspective. As the Zambia Federation of Disability Organization, our mandate revolves around advocacy, research, as well as capacity building for organizations of persons with disabilities. All this is in a quest to ensure that people with disabilities have their rights, freedoms, and dignity respected on an equal basis with others, including on opportunities that are generally and specifically available in the different sectors of the economy. It is our role as the Zambia Federation of Disability Organizations to ensure that even when it comes to disaster risk reduction conversations, people with disabilities are not left behind. And therefore, it is our role as the Zambia Federation of Disability Organizations to ensure that the perspectives and the needs of persons with disabilities are included in disaster risk management processes, strategies, and policies. It is also our duty as the Zambia Federation of Disability Organizations to ensure that people with disabilities and their families have improved their adaptation capacities, and also to ensure that people with disabilities are able to have their capacities raised in terms of disaster risk reduction. I should indicate also that it is our mandate to ensure that we lobby and advocate for disability inclusive early warning systems and early action protocols to ensure that people with disabilities are part of the disability inclusive disaster risk reduction conversation. This is because when disasters strike, people with disabilities are not excluded, but rather they are affected even double than those without disabilities. Worse off, children with disabilities and women with disabilities are affected even more than those without disabilities. And therefore, to ensure that these are catered for, it is our mandate as the Zambia Federation of Disability Organizations, with the support of everyone else, to ensure that the conversations on disaster risk reduction are including persons with disabilities from inception.
We've heard the devastating impact that disasters have on our communities. And without inclusive planning, these impacts will continue to worsen. Every detail matters, but too often, disability inclusion is often seen as an afterthought rather than a priority. Mr. Wamundila Waliwuya explains this further.
My name is Wamundila Waliwuya. I am part-time advocacy advisor for Southern Africa Federation of the Disabled. We are now in a world which is faced with a lot of situations of risk and humanitarian emergencies. And these situations do not separate themselves persons with disabilities. In actuality, persons with disabilities are disproportionately affected currently by climate change, which leads into different, and of course we've got different disasters which affect society, but are aggravated when it comes to persons with disabilities. What we are calling for is to ensure all countries in the SADC region now adopt disability inclusive disaster risk reduction programs. A disability inclusive disaster risk program is a program which ensures at all levels of disaster risk reduction and management, at the response stage, before, during, and after disasters, all systems inclusive of persons with disabilities. One, early warning systems and messages must be put in inclusive manner and accessible to all persons with disabilities, including in sign language, videos, and braille. Secondly, all evacuation systems should be inclusive of persons with disabilities. This includes evacuation lifts, evacuation transport, and evacuation warnings. And then the third level is evacuation centers where persons are placed should be accessible to persons with disabilities in terms of infrastructure, sanitation and water, and communication. And the third is where we are talking about ensuring that all personnel, government or volunteers who are working in the field of disaster risk reduction understand what disability inclusion in as far as DRR is concerned. So there must be training of all government staff and volunteers around DRR, which is disability inclusive.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Hello, I'm Marjolein Meyander Baltussen. I'm the Community-Based Inclusive Development Advisor for Africa East and Southern region, based in Lusaka, Zambia. I work for CBM, Christoffel Blinde Mission. We work with governments and partners, implementing programs related to health, education, livelihood, social protection and advocacy. We collaborate with organizations of persons with disabilities on regional and national level. If we talk about disaster risk reduction, it's important to realize that disasters impact persons with disability uniquely due to various reasons. First of all, early warning systems do not always reach persons with visual, hearing, or intellectual disabilities, and as such, their response to the disaster can delay. Adults and children with physical disability might not be able to escape natural disasters or floods and earthquakes, or man-made disasters as conflicts and the results of climate change. And there's a risk they lose assistive devices during the disaster, which leads to lack of communication, aggravation of the condition and immobility. So, some of the challenges in achieving inclusive disaster risk reduction are that there's a lack of reasonable accommodation for persons with disability to be able to participate from the onset. So in the planning, coordination of DRR. For example, lack of sign language interpretation, unavailability of personal assistance, or there are no materials in an accessible format. And the second point is that meeting places for DRR program and the living environment are not always accessible for everyone. This also relates to access to healthcare, education, livelihood opportunities related to DRR. For example, accessible and adaptable agricultural programs. So including persons with disabilities is often an afterthought. The program is already running, you have a village loan and saving group, etc., tackling DRR issues, then realizing that persons with disabilities are not participating, then at the last moment maybe family members can participate, but not the person themselves. And also misconception and lack of knowledge on the right of persons with disabilities plays a role. So that's why it's important to include persons with disability from the onset in DRR planning and implementation. Persons with disabilities and their organizations can advocate for and advise on how to ensure inclusive disaster risk reduction programming, addressing issues related to reasonable accommodation, accessibility, but also addressing unnoticed issues related to misconceptions, stigma and discrimination. So finally, steps to ensure better inclusion of persons with disabilities in DRR efforts would address all above mentioned issues. Advocacy for inclusion, inclusive DRR policies and practices, and participations of persons with disabilities in the program to show that everybody can contribute to a safe and sustainable community. And the last point, but very important, to ensure and budget for reasonable accommodation and accessibility. From the beginning, in the planning, in the budgeting, There should be a budget for this, otherwise it won't happen in the implementation. Thank you very much for this possibility to share with you some of the issues related and to advocate for inclusive disaster risk reduction. Thank you.
My name is Giulia Traversi and I work for the European Disability Forum as Humanitarian Policy Officer. Some of the biggest challenges to achieve inclusive disaster risk reduction policies, DRR policies, include lack of data on the specific requirements of persons with disabilities, insufficient representation and participation of persons with disabilities and their representative organizations in decision making, as well as in the implementation and monitoring of policies, limited resources and funding for inclusive DRR initiative which directly address persons with disabilities, socio-cultural barriers such as stigma and discrimination, physical inaccessibility of infrastructure including transports and buildings, and inaccessibility of information and communication systems. Among the steps to ensure the inclusion of persons with disabilities in DRR efforts, we have the collection of disaggregated data by gender, age and disability to better understand the requirements of persons with disabilities. This can be done by using tools such as the Washington Group set of questions, ensuring then meaningful participation of persons with disabilities and their representative organization in the design, implementation and monitoring of the decision making, provide adequate funding for OPDs for implementation of disability inclusive DRR policies, enhancing accessibility of physical infrastructure as well as accessibility of information and communication systems, including disability inclusive early warning systems, and conducting awareness and advocacy campaigns to address the sociocultural barriers and promote inclusive practices. Accessibility for persons with disability makes all of society more resilient to disaster and more inclusive and functional in the long term. Thank you.
My name is Bantati Tegoitile. I am the Communications Officer at SAFOT. Our motto is Unlocking an Inclusive Society for Persons with Disabilities in Southern Africa. Through the DRR project, we are working tirelessly alongside our partners to ensure that persons with disabilities and their needs are included in disaster risk management processes, strategies, and policies at a regional level. The DRR project is more than just a response to the increasing threats of natural disasters and climate change. It's a commitment to creating a world where inclusive policies are the standard, not the exception. We've seen firsthand how inclusive policies can make a difference, whether it's ensuring accessible communication during emergencies or involving persons with disabilities in decision-making processes. However, there's still much more work to be done. As we move forward, we must lobby and advocate for inclusive policies that promote and protect the rights of persons with disabilities and leave no one behind.
Disasters do not discriminate, but our responses can. Together, we can build a future where every voice is heard and no one is left behind. Our goal is clear: to create a safer, more inclusive society for everyone. The lessons learned from the DRR project are clear. Inclusive policies aren't just beneficial, they are necessary for building resilient communities. Let's continue working collectively to ensure that our actions reflect the diversity and strengths of all communities, especially the most vulnerable.